My name is Arvin Nitollama. I'm 26 years old, and summer shredding was my second competition. I competed in the men's physique division. My first competition was in 2018. I trained there with no coach. I was like motivated. Kind of that funny gym story, right? Like get a girl to break your heart and then get into the gym. So post that breakup in 2017, I was like, yeah, you know what? Let's do it. And everyone's like, yeah, you should compete. And so I kind of did it with no coach, no. But I did all right. I mean, placed third in my class in novice in
Gotcha.
a show in California called it was the California State Championships.
Okay.
And then I kind of fell off the wayside, right? Like um, took 4 years in between. So that was 2018. And I didn't step back on stage until this year. I never got out of fitness, but I definitely had no direction. So that's kind of where I was. It's kind of in this like weird, in between with bodybuilding for a while.
And was bodybuilding something that you kind of always had your eye on, or did somebody have to kind of introduce you to the world of it?
So in 2018, when I did that competition, I had a friend who was really eager for me to try to step on stage because he saw some kind of potential in me. So we trained every day, right? His name was Ernie. So we trained every day, and he was telling me like, yeah, we'll step on that stage together. And then eventually, he kind of just like, no, I'm not going to compete, but it's still up for you to finish it, right? So we finished that through together. Um, but in a sense, yeah, it was never really something I had my eye on until I saw kind of some potential that I had in myself. Um, Given that I didn't have a coach in that first show, I lost that direction. So I still had, that's when my interest in bodybuilding began. But after the fact, I had no direction to take myself. I would still follow up on, Olympia, any competitions that show up. I'll follow it on YouTube, but I never had a direction for myself. But now I finally see a clear picture.
Gotcha. And without a coach, where did you find the information to be like, okay, this is how you handle this part of, bodybuilding. This is how I handle the prep. This is how I handle all this stuff. Like, where did that information come
So
from?
I have a bit of a kinesiology background along with a biology background, right? So I was able to understand nutrition and body mechanics. I was able to train properly and accordingly. Diet was a little bit hit or miss. I didn't understand how to get into a peak week and how to deplete carbs going into a show at the time. My friend was trying to walk me through it, but he wasn't, coaching anyone. He was going off his own personal experience. Um, and the day of the show, I was actually talking to this guy. I forget his name, but we were backstage. They were walking us through how the show was going to go, right? And I asked him, I said, so how does all this work? And he goes, your coach didn't explain it to you? And I said, I don't have a coach. And he goes, dude, what? Like, you don't have a coach? I said, yeah, like, and so he was nice enough to kind of walk me through, like, hey, this is what they're going to have you do. You're going to have the expediter, telling you where to post, like when to come out, kind of walking you through. And this is how first call outs work. This is how second call outs work. So he was explaining to me. So it was all very in the moment, right? Like just straight into the deep end, no knowledge of how a show day will go. And yeah, I mean, it was a blast, honestly. I saw on stage some of the guys that were on there. There's a guy, he won the class overall, Frankie Yan. He's a pro now, but he actually trained with CJ Kim, and his coach at the time was Buendia. And so I saw them and I was like, that's Buendia, and he's coaching these two guys. And so that was actually a really cool experience. But yeah, that's how it all kind of happened on that first day.
So do you feel like you're kind of the person who is like, not super worried about, like you're not necessarily anxious about that moment. It's just like, an opportunity. It's an experience. We're going to live in it and not kind of worry about it as much.
Yeah, you know what? I've really learned this about myself is that I feel like there may not be a moment too big for me. Whether, because I grew up playing sports and there was always, there's like these pressure moments in sports, whether it's the end of the game. And it never felt like I would shy away from it. I may not have been completely skilled to complete it, but I never lacked the confidence, right? So it always went hand in hand that way. Especially with that first competition. I mean, I got third in my class, which was pretty cool I had no idea what it meant, right? So I got called third, and I even hesitated because my number was being called. I didn't realize it was my turn, and they had to call my number twice. I finally stepped out, and then I called my friend. I was like, well, what does this mean? And he's like, oh, you mean it's like, essentially you probably got third, right? Is what he was telling me. So that was a cool moment. I know some people who have shared their first time experience, how jittery they were on stage. I was looking around like, this is awesome. Like, this is a great environment. I'm looking at the guy that's first in my class, and I'm like, he looks sick. Like, when I'm on stage with him, and I'm thinking like, that guy looks awesome. And so it's an enjoyable thing for me to be on that stage.
That's
Definitely.
cool.
It does not feel like it's a big moment. It's something that I feel like I can thrive in.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here just for a second. Let me tell you about Smoking Gun Coffee. They're a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to produce a quality coffee at an affordable price. They only buy coffee from small coffee farmers around the world with a cup score of at least 85. Each batch is roasted to order for maximum freshness. They also donate a large portion of their proceeds to organizations that help local communities, veterans, first responders, or you can donate to the foundation of your choice at the checkout by going to www.smokingguncoffee.com. That's SMOKIN Gun Coffee.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And take us through a little bit about what that first prep was like.
So my friends were trying to walk me through like how to get into peak week. And my weirdest experience was definitely like, I thought you just completely cut carbs. And so I was miserable, man. Like, no lie, miserable. I was like barely drinking water. I didn't really know how to enter a peak week easily or like ease into one compared to what I learned from my coach now. But I completely cut carbs. I was basically like just eating meat leading up to a show. I didn't, you're supposed to carb load going into a peak week. I did the exact opposite. My posing was super dodgy. I was looking up YouTube videos on how to do it. So yeah, just a lot of like not having direction, and you're not realizing like, what is the judge looking for in this certain moment? How do you best present your physique to kind of give yourself an advantage of like above the other competitors?
So once you kind of had that experience of being in the show and having a little success and then you kind of get out of it, you said you kind of had that period of a few years where it was like you didn't really have a direction. What was that COVID, or what was that for you that kind of caused that lack of direction and getting out of the sport a little bit? We
was trying to get into that direction of getting a coach. The coach that I found was John Ortega. We didn't quite click. And there was also among some other life things, like my wife now, we had just met. And so I wanted to kind of move our relationship forward at the same time, on top of starting my career that I have now. And so it was almost like I could compete, but I do have these other life things that I wanted to focus on as well. I never stopped, training and really focusing on my own fitness. Now, I didn't diet properly, but I never probably skipped the gym, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's how that in between was. So there was always this eagerness to want to step back into it, especially seeing other friends compete. But in the sense of wanting it for myself, but there's this other thing. And I kept almost pushing it off to the side. Like, I'll get there. Let me just handle these specific things in my life right now.
Gotcha. And then what kind of pulled you back into it for the most recent show?
Well, surprisingly enough, so when my wife and I first met, she was actually at my first competition, and she played D1 softball. So my wife, Jamie, and so her experience with athletes has always been just sports, right? And so when she saw everyone competing, she goes, I would never do that. And so I never really had her full support. Like, she was supportive of me, like, she was my number one fan at that sport, but she was never on board with competing together. Right. Then come November 1st, 2021, was our anniversary. We were in Hawaii, and I talked her into skydiving. That's her biggest fear, is heights. Like, she can't look over the edge of a second story building without her feeling like she's going to fall off. Right. And I talked her into skydiving in Hawaii. I said, this is a once in a lifetime thing. Let's do it in Hawaii. Like, why not? Right. First anniversary. Let's do it. And so she did it. And in a sense, she conquered her biggest fear. And this is where her motivation and her support have really pulled me through, because she told me 2 days later, hey, I've really been thinking about this since we went skydiving, but I want to do a bikini competition. And I said, who are you? Hold on. You went from, training for softball to training CrossFit to just kind of being in the gym because of it. And now you want to compete. Like, who are you? I never talked her into it, right? And so she got her coach. She's been training with her coach since November. Her first competition will be October 1st. And I was like, well, that'd be pretty cool to compete one day with her, right? And what really pulled me into it was when my first time visiting in November was Alphaland Gym. So I knew I wanted to move to Houston, or at least Texas. My company gave me the chance to transfer, but Houston gave me the best offer. And I started hearing rumblings about this Alphaland Gym. And if I'm being so honest, I feel so bad, but I feel like this one was a crime in the fitness world. I didn't really follow the Alphalete brand until this past November. And now I'm all in. Now I'm like, wow, this is a great brand. Christian's doing some great stuff here. But in November, I went to Alphalete Gym and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like I'm seeing a lot of like influencers film and all that. And as time went on from November, we visited Houston a few more times to close on our home that we bought. And each time we went, we would always go to Alphalete. And at that point, it was Alphaland, right? So they opened this new year. And I'd look around and my wife would tell me, you're not that much smaller and your physique's not that much worse than the guys who are doing this for a living. And we started having this conversation of like, yeah, it feels like I could stack up against them, right? And I'm seeing there was almost like this jealousy factor, I'm not going to lie. And I think in bodybuilding, a lot of that plays into it. It's this ego, like I want to be the best. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, hey, I don't have that, because I do have an ego. And I think you should in bodybuilding to be able to feel like you can be the best. You can bring the best physique there, right? And I'd look around and I'd think, wait, so I've been doing fitness, I've been into fitness for, I don't know, since 2018, right? Let's say since that first competition on. But there's been other people here who have kind of like, in a sense, profited from it, have created a brand from it, who basically essentially all they do for a living is fitness and it's their passion. And I said, I have a passion for this. Why am I not doing that for myself? And I questioned myself. I said, you've kind of put it off to the side for 4 years and all the things that you've accomplished or wanted to accomplish, they're checked off. Like you've married your girl, you've bought your house, you've moved up, professionally. Why not pursue your passion? And I questioned myself from that first time at Alphalete Gym in November until April. And when we came down here in April 1st, that's my birthday, we went again. And I was like, I really want to do summer shredding. And that was it. That was a moment where I knew, I was like, all right, I want to commit to this, but I can't do it the same way I did before, right? I got to get a coach.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
And so once you kind of committed to like, hey, I'm going to do this show, what was it like for you to go through that process with a coach? What were some things that were just like, wow, that was drastically different, or like I've learned a lot since, having a coach, things like that?
One major difference between that first prep and the second one this past year is that first prep I took from January to May to cut. Now, I knew you needed about a 16 to 20 week prep time to get ready for a competition. When I decided to do summer shredding, it was 8 weeks away. And so I was like, this could go really bad or it could go really well. And so when I spoke to my coach, his name is Jovan. He lives in the Philippines. He has some great connection. His coach is Jeremy Buendia. So I knew if there was a coach I could go through this prep with, it'd probably be him, right? So I reached out to him on Instagram, and then he shared me his WhatsApp number, and we started talking, and he goes like, send me some physique pictures right now. And I sent him some, and he goes, okay, how far away is the show? And I said, 8 weeks. And he was like, you're kidding. He's like, we would need to start right now if we did this. And he was gracious enough to kind of take me under his wing. And he was like, all right, we're going to do this. It's going to be hard. And he made it clear because he adjusted a diet to really ramp up, So, yeah, it was a lot different because he gave me a direction. And one of the things I didn't need to worry about was figuring it out. He had a plan and I just needed to execute it, which at that point, I've been, in the gym. I spent my time in the gym. All I needed to do now was take that plan and do it to a T.
Gotcha.
And so we started meal prepping and all of that stuff.
Gotcha. And what do you think is, during that prep specifically, what do you think is something that, you find yourself really struggling with during prep?
Well, I felt like I had a lot of obstacles to take care of before the show. Obviously, moving from Las Vegas to Houston was a big deal. Securing my home, that was very stressful because we would have to fly out from Vegas to Houston. There was about 3 weekends in April where we were coming back every weekend to settle things with the home. And obviously being now coached and you have this diet that you have to follow, we were calling up, I forget the company's name, but we were calling them up every weekend and we had to tell them like, hey, we need this much chicken, this much rice, this many egg whites. And so that was a commitment, right? Like there was no excuse. If I wanted to make this happen, I had to find a way to make it happen. So the hotel that we stayed at, even one of the weekends, didn't have a microwave in the room. We had to go downstairs, to reheat our meals. So like this front desk lady seeing me come down 3-4 times a day, reheating my meal while she's at work. And she's asking me like, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, we're closing on our house, but we're training for competition. But because we're moving here and all that. And so we had to explain that. And she was asking me why I was eating so like often. And it was always something reheated. But other than that, obviously transferring jobs was also a challenge because I had to train the person that was replacing me and then getting acclimated to the new role here. And now obviously settling in, right? Like, because we flew in 2 weeks before summer shredding. And that's when we moved here. But so we had to unpack everything. And then, so the day that I actually flew in, one of the biggest challenges I had was our flight left at 7 a.m. So I got up in Vegas at 3 a.m., did my fasted cardio, made sure I cooked and ate my meals. We flew into Houston. We got picked up by a friend. We got driven to our house. I got in the car that was already shipped here and I went straight to Lifetime and I trained. And then I came home and I was like, I can't miss a beat because this is just what it demands of me right now. So definitely just sticking to the plan amongst like all these other life events going on is definitely very challenging.
It's crazy how whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, whatever, like we'll put these certain obstacles in our way to test our commitment. It's like, do you really want to achieve this? Do you really want to commit to this lifestyle? And a lot of times up front, there's some things that will go wrong where, it makes you think, do I want it? And then, you make that decision, yes, I do, or you back out of some, whatever it is. And I think it's really such an interesting thing because it doesn't matter if you're doing a bodybuilding show or if you're just trying to lose some weight or you're trying to get healthier. People will, they'll start going to the gym and all of a sudden their car won't work or they'll get sick the first week or whatever happens, and it's like a little test. Do you really want this?
That's right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people will say yes, they want it because it's easy to say yes when things are comfortable. And I genuinely believe that it's easy to give your yes when things are going your way. But what happens when, like you said, your car breaks down, you're late to work, you're now working overtime? Are you still going to make the time for the gym at the end of the day? Yeah. Right? Like, are you still going to carve out the time to achieve the goals that you set for yourself? And I think a lot of people, that's what separates greatness from being average.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure.
People who won't carve out that time, who won't go after that goal just because of circumstances, they'll let life dictate the direction of their life. Yeah. And these circumstances will now shape their lives instead of kind of taking control of saying, no, regardless of what happened at work, regardless if I woke up late, whatever it is, I'm going to carve time for my goals because this is what I committed to.
Yeah. And I think the way you say carve time, it's so true. You know, it really is kind of like this really sometimes brutal process of like, man, I wish I could do that, but if I really want this other thing, I have to do it. You know, it's prioritizing what you want.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the NBA finals were on. I'm a big basketball guy, and I barely watched it this year, the entire playoffs, just because at the end of the day, like, I wanted to focus on my goals.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's cool to be able to watch the game. It's cool to watch Steph Curry, you know, like launch threes from everywhere. But at the same time, it's like, what is this doing to benefit what I've committed to?
Right.
You know, am I willing to sacrifice that little bit of, you know, pleasure to be able to get what I want down the road? And that's where the bridge happens for a lot of people.
But once you got to that next show, was there any different feeling going into this one than it was the first show you did?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I felt so confident going into the show, and I knew my conditioning may have not been on point, or I may not have had that same length of a prep, right? Like 8 weeks, that's not a long time for a competition, especially when you've been 4 years removed from it, right? And my coach kind of dialed me in on posing, and he gave me a routine, which I didn't have one before. He gave me feedback on, hey, this is what the judges would look for in a certain moment. So knowing a lot more when it's not so like just you're going through the motions of as it's happening to you, you're reacting. I now knew I had a plan, right? And going into the show, I knew like there's certain points in my physique that are my strength, which is my back pose, my transitions. My front pose was what I was struggling with the most, right? And so just knowing, okay, when we get in, like we got to nail these certain things to give ourselves a chance. And my coach and I had a lot of dialogue, like, hey, this is where you want to give yourself that opportunity.
And did you feel any, not necessarily pressure, but any feelings of, because you did know kind of what was going on and what you had to do to get it done? Like, did you feel any feelings, whatever you want to call it, because you kind of knew this time versus last time it was like, oh, we'll just kind of go with the flow?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So my brother flew into town and he was asking me like, so how does this work? And I had to explain to him like, hey, this is how it goes. Everyone does a routine. You're set off by class. Everyone in the class does a routine. When they finish the routines, you now get called into a thing called first call outs. And in the show, like summer shredding or these like lower level NPC shows, your call out kind of your placing in first call outs kind of determines finals. Like that's the truth. And some people will say like, oh, I'm going to bring something in tighter for finals. Like, no, prejudging pretty much determined it, right? Like when you get into the Olympia level, like, yeah, that second day can really change your placing. But in these lower shows, like, yeah, like prejudging the way that ends, it's probably going to reflect finals, right? And so I explained to him like, hey, if I don't get first call outs, it sucks. We just kind of missed it, right? And so yeah, and like knowing that when they started doing first call outs, from my experience, a call out is about 5 people. First call out. They called out 5 people and I wasn't called yet. So they called out the 5. Now I didn't know him at the time, but Tony Pascoal, he was called out right before me. And I was like, damn, that's 5 people. And I'm looking on stage and I got my wife the VIP pass. So she's sitting right in the front. I could see her. And she's like giving me a thumbs up. She's like, you're okay, you're okay. And there was this 40-second pause from when Tony was called to when, because I looked back and we recorded it, how long this pause was, 40 seconds from the judges. And it was just silence. The crowd's cheering, whatever, but the judges were quiet. And they finally said, let's get 168 out there. And I was like, holy smokes, I almost missed first call out. So yeah, a lot of like feelings, kind of knowing how the structure is going to go. It definitely can put that pressure, but I was like, if I can just hold this front pose, when we get to comparisons, I know when I can do it. And I knew after we did the first call out, I had a chance. It felt so quiet in my own head that I felt like I could have probably heard something drop across the room. It was like just ringing in my ears. I was like, did I just miss first call out? And actually, I think we had the biggest first call out at Summer Shredding was Class A. I think there was like a 7-person call out.
So after you stepped off stage though, what kind of like emotions did you feel like you had, even just different from that first show? Because like we're talking about, you kind of had that initial experience of the, kind of the bliss of it, the first time feeling, but how did this one kind of differ?
Well, like I shared earlier, I wanted to know where I stacked up compared to seeing some really cool fitness, kind of presence on social media. Like Glenn was in my class, Glenn Gillen, Tony Pascal, like Isaiah Miranda was in there, Tommy Nguyen, which I didn't really know about him, but now that I've gotten to be good friends with him, he's ranked second overall in the natural GBO league. So like to be able to share, that stage with those people and to think, I did this on an 8-week prep with all these crazy things going on in my life. Like I was moving states. I did this on an 8-week prep. Imagine if I gave myself a 20-week prep with no obstacles.
Right.
Where could I stand it now? And it was almost that moment of like, holy crap, I've missed out on the fitness industry this whole time. And it's honestly, summer shredding has become this launching point for me. And it's become this dedication that it's not just going to be another 4 years to my next competition. I now have a purpose. I now have a direction. I know where I'm going. And it's because I can stand a chance on an 8-week prep. If I can pull that off, I can, like, the sky's the limit for me. And I know that now.
Do you feel like being around that environment has increased your intensity?
Definitely. I think it was those visits to Alphaland that kind of opened my eye. But summer shredding kind of, like I said, lit that fire. And being able to, finish fourth in my class, which, is not the best, but to be able to say like, okay, I see now. I see where I can improve on and I can take it from here and do even more great things with this. But seeing everyone else, like, yeah, it does make you feel like I got to step my game up because it's the only way. And it's actually, it's a non confrontational competition that you're having with these people, right? Like you're seeing them like, damn, I could do that. Or like, damn, that looks sick. Let me try to one up that. Right. And that's how it feels. But it's not, no one's putting each other down. Like, and that's the great thing about this fitness industry is that it is competitive in that way. And there are some rivalries at the top level of bodybuilding, but all in all, a lot of people will pick each other up. And that's what makes the fitness industry so unique, so cool, because there's no rivalry, really. A lot of people are willing to work together to collab, and I think that's awesome. And I think that's what makes bodybuilding so cool is that, like, if they can do it, let me try, right? And as people see these, like, little victories, these little results, like, hey, I've never had a six-pack before, but now I got a little four-pack. Yeah. And they're like, wow, I never thought I would be able to do that, or I never thought I'd be able to squat this amount or bench press this amount. And as people kind of achieve these little victories, it keeps them wanting more, right? Like that's what's so addicting about the gym is that like, wow, I never thought I could do that before, but look at me now. Yeah. And I think a lot of people can, gain a lot from being able to better themselves through this industry.
Definitely. Life a lot of times these days, it becomes super, and not necessarily always in a bad way per se, but it becomes like very, very comfortable. We don't struggle too much here in this country a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And fitness is one of the cool things that we can kind of develop our own challenges, like make challenges and set them out, set goals and overcome obstacles. And like you said, just we can build confidence, have more kind of that self-empowering, feeling.
Definitely. And I agree. I think there's this level of comfort that Americans have, which I was born in the Philippines. So I've seen two ends of the spectrum, right? To see the home that I had in the Philippines to where I live now, it's stark. The struggles there. I remember we would have to pump water out of a well in the Philippines, right? And that's not something you ever would do in America, unless you're maybe in a farm somewhere, right?
Right.
But other than that, like most cities have like a running supply of water. And so you do get comfortable, but that's what makes bodybuilding so unique is that there's no reason for you to do what you're doing other than you chose to put yourself through this like insane goal, right? Like if you're playing football, right? Say you're on a football team on Sundays, they have whatever team is lined up for you to play with, right? They said your Jets are going to play the Patriots on Sunday. So now your mentality is, okay, now I have my adversity set for me. Well, in bodybuilding, there is no adversity. You had no reason to do what you did other than you chose to put yourself through this hell to
Right.
accomplish this goal for what? Like to maybe get a medal? I don't know. But really, it goes deeper than that. It's like, I think people just want to see the best versions of themselves. So it's
Definitely.
very cool.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, you know, it's almost like crazy that people do bodybuilding. You know, where people find passion sometimes is in the craziest of places.
Yeah, definitely.
Before we head out, though, if you want to share where people can get, you know, in touch with you or follow you on social media, that'd be cool.
Yeah, definitely. So my Instagram is Arvin Nitollama, which is just my first last name, ARVIN NITOLLAMA. And then on TikTok, it's at Buff Llama Boy. And on YouTube, I'm starting to launch my YouTube page as well. So it's same as my Instagram, just first last name. And yeah, thanks, man. Do you mind if I actually share something for the first time and use your podcast as a platform?
For sure, man. Yeah, go ahead.
So obviously, my next I've chosen a competition. My next one's on October 1st. I'm going to use that as kind of my rebound from summer shredding to get right back into it. But I wanted to kind of find, like you said, how does one separate themselves from all the other people doing fitness, right? And one of the things that I've committed is in my house that I bought, there's like this floor plan. And if you look at it, there's this thing called the flex room. And it's supposed to be meant for the office, a crib, whatever you want to do, third bedroom, or like an extra guest room. But I was driving home from the day after summer shredding from Taste of Texas, a restaurant here. And I was thinking, like, how am I going to set myself apart? What am I going to do? Because I'm so driven into like getting the edge up that the flex room kind of popped up in my head. I'm like, wait a second, how many influencers or bodybuilders do you know? And that's what I asked my wife, like, that has a posing room inside their house with a full-blown mirror, full-blown lighting, just to create content in. I said, you never see that because everyone does it at the gym, and not many gyms have a posing room. Like Alphaland has a sick one, right? There's a gym here, Species Gym. They have a room. I said, no one has it at home, and you can do a lot more stuff at home because it's your space. So we're going to turn that flex room into this actual flex room. We're going to get like an 8-foot mirror cross wide, 6-foot tall, full back mirror, and we're going to get blackout curtains to get the room as dark as possible to control the lighting. But we're going to use that as being able to, obviously there's an advantage of being able to practice posing for competitions, but at the same time, just being able to create that aesthetic look in a content room like that. So we're looking forward to being able to launch the flex room. So definitely looking forward to being able to collab with some of the people that I've met. Like, hey, come over, like, come stay at my house. And then after this, we'll just go create some content.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I appreciate you sharing that on the show as well.
Of course. Well, thanks for letting me get that platform, man. I really do appreciate it.
Definitely is good talking to you. Good meeting you. I look forward to meeting you in person one day down at Alphaland.
Definitely, man. Let me know when you're down in Texas.